legend of the Dark Knight is brought vividly to life in this magnificent screen version of Bob Kane's immortal creation. By day, Bruce Wayne, Michael Keaton, is a billionaire playboy. By night, he is Batman, unstoppable Caped Crusader and fearless defender of Gotham City, armed with a stunning array of high-tech gadgets including the awesome Batmobile. His mortal enemy, the utterly demented Joker, Jack Nicholson, is intent on ruling the city, destroying Batman and wooing Wayne's girlfriend, the gorgeous Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger. The scene is set for a titanic showdown on the streets of Gotham between the forces of good and evil, capitalized, when the clown Prince of Crime hatches a dastardly plot to make Gotham City die laughing. Batman. So when I was a kid, Batman was huge, and this, to me, is Batman. You know, people can look at Adam West and say that's their Batman. People can look at Christian Bale and say that's their Batman. People can look at Ben Affleck and say that's their Batman. People in the future can look at Robert Pattinson and say that's their Batman. People can look at Kevin Conroy and say that's their Batman. Hell, people can even say Val Kilmer is their Batman. No one can say George Clooney is their Batman because that is absolutely fucking ridiculous. But everyone has their own preference. And for me, it's not about Michael Keaton being my favorite Batman. It's not about him being the best Batman. It's about him being my Batman. He's my favorite actor, and it stems from this movie. And this is my original VHS tape from when I was a kid, the one I watched over and over and over again. And I've told the story 100,000 times. I'll tell it again. When I was probably 7 or 8, 9 in primary school, I once woke up at 6 AM on the dot for some reason, was wide awake, and you know, I would get up at 8 o'clock to go to school, and I thought, I've got 2 hours before I have to get up, what shall I do? 121 minutes, Batman. So I opened it up and I put this tape from this case into my machine, and I haven't rewound it since the last time I watched it. I wasn't kind to this tape, I did not rewind. But I put it on, and I remember the final shot of the film where Batman looks up at the bat symbol, and my alarm at 8 o'clock went off, and I went into school feeling like I was the absolute shit. Like I was like, I've been up for 2 hours already, and I watched Batman this morning, and you've all just woken up. I can see there's sleep in your eyes, you're still tired, you're rubbing your... I was just like so like ridiculously and unreasonably feeling superior about this. But anyway, the film I love it so much, and I'll probably do an in-depth review of it for the Epic Film Challenge 2 at some point, where I'll no doubt retell that same story to the eye rolls and yawns of Connie and you, the viewer, because I keep telling that story. But it's one of my favorite film stories. I think I told it in my film stories video as well. So this film is now in its 30th anniversary year, and Batman as a character is in his 80th anniversary year. Many years ago I did the RazorwireReviews Batathon, which was me reviewing all of the main Batman movies, including the animated ones up until that point in time, until the release of The Dark Knight Rises. Every week for like 14 weeks, 15 weeks I did a Batman review and video until The Dark Knight Rises came out. And it was one of my favorite things I've ever done on YouTube. Perhaps the videos weren't very polished or good, but the experience of it was fantastic. In 2015 I did the RazorwireReviews Batathon Returns, where I was going to cover the 60s series and some of the video games. No one was interested. It has like 50 views, no comments, and I was putting so much time into it, and so I just kind of quietly killed that series off. At one point I thought I could do the RazorwireReviews Batathon Rises, but and this would have been a perfect year to do it, but I had too much on my plate. So unfortunately not, but I'm a huge Batman fan, and I hadn't thought about him for quite a while. You know, he's one of those characters I'm a huge fan of, and I take breaks from every now and again. But I saw that this film was showing in my local Cineworld, and I could barely believe it. And so I wanted to go, and 2 of my friends were up for it. So we met up. We hadn't kind of been... I don't think we've ever actually gone out as the 3 of us. Actually, thinking about it, considering how many years we've been friends and known each other. But, you know, I think most people around my age and older will know that with some of your friends, adult life gets in the way, and so we hadn't really spent much time together recently, and so it was awesome to catch up with those guys. Went out for a meal beforehand, caught up, and then went to see Batman on the big screen. And I'm not going to talk about the plot or anything, I'll review the movie, just my thoughts on seeing it in the cinema. It's definitely one off the bucket list as far as seeing one of my favorite films in the cinema. I loved it. It was, and I don't know what was used to show in the cinema, because I know that these films, Batman, Batman Returns, Forever, and Robin, I'll leave that one in, have been re-released, or going to be re-released in 4K on Blu-ray, and they've been remastered, and I think even the 2D, the regular 1080p Blu-ray discs are sourced from that 4K remaster, so hopefully they all look great, but it looked like an amazing remaster on the cinema and the big screen, but I would have thought that they would announce that and tout it like, this is the 4K, you know, restoration remaster, because I was seeing things in this film I've never seen before. But you could argue that's because I'd never seen it on a huge cinema screen before. Looked fantastic. You know, I've seen 80s films in the cinema over the past year, like The Burbs and The Goonies, and you know, they look their age. They're not quite crisp, and this was really, it looked fantastic. But so that was part of the experience, of just seeing it look so great. But like little details that you never really catch out on, like when Bruce enters Vicky's apartment, he's like, oh, nice apartment, you know, lots of space. And then later on, the Joker comes in, he's like, nice apartment you got here, lots of space. And it's just like, I'd never noticed that joke before. And one of my friends, I think, was a little bit, you know, thought the Joker was a bit over the top. I love Jack Nicholson's Joker. It's so, people talk about chewing the scenery in movies when you're acting over the top and hamming it up. You know, he's devouring the scenery in this movie, and it is so perfectly fitting. I love the gothic look of this film. It feels like a comic book. It feels like larger than life. It doesn't feel like, no offense at all to the Dark Knight trilogy, but it doesn't feel like, you know, Batman in Chicago. You know, it doesn't feel like Batman in the real world. It feels like Batman in Gotham, right? Gothic Gotham. Like, I don't know, there's just something, it needs to be dark and gritty and slightly unreal, you know, and a lot of that Art Deco stuff, it just looks so cool. I love the design of it. One thing I will say, though, watching it now, unfortunately, it felt a little bit empty. You know, you have the scene where the Joker kills the guy on kind of the front steps of that kind of government building, and the crowd isn't that big, you know, and you know, just even at the end when he has the celebration and stuff, and he's throwing the money into the crowd. I don't know, just looking at it now with adult eyes, you can kind of see there's not that many people there, and so almost it feels a little bit empty at times in terms of just the crowds and stuff, which was strange. But you know, it is what it is. I love the huge sets in the movie, and Michael Keaton, as ever, just underplays it to perfection. And you know, yeah, I just had a great time watching this film in the cinema again. Awesome, love it, love it, love it. And after the film, in fact, they showed a post-credit scene, which I didn't realize was a part of Batman when it came out in 1989, and it was a fairly lengthy post-credit scene actually, and it was called Batman Returns. So yes, it was a double bill of these two movies, and I fucking love this film. Oh, just looking at the cover gives me joy. You know, I fucking love that cover. I obsessed over this cover. I wanted this for Christmas, I think, and my mum got it for me. Oh my god, it's Batman fucking Returns. And I'll never forget this as long as I live when I watch this film. The back cover of this video has this scene where Catwoman is straddling Batman. And in the movie it's like that, you know, he's on the floor and she's kind of like that. But the cover makes it look like she's pinned him up against a wall. So I always imagined it as a scene with, you know, and then when I saw the film, and I think I'd seen it on TV before I had the video, so it always threw me. But, you know, I mean, I would pore over every detail of the back cover of this videotape, and yeah, so so many memories of that cover. You know, it just, to me as a kid, it just seemed bigger and better and darker and moodier, and oh man, just such a great 1-2 punch of movies, I think, where you get the best of Tim Burton's Batman vision, which I know a lot of people don't like, and it's really enjoy. I've said this before, but you know, one of my friends was like, you know, it's a little bit, you know, he didn't say the word campy, but it's kind of what he meant. And I said, isn't it strange how when this film came out, Batman '89, people were looking at it, and all they had as a frame of reference for live-action Batman in the movie was the Adam West 1966 film and series. And Tim Burton came along and said, wow, the dark Batman, like this is a real dark, serious, gritty take on it. Then we had the Dark Knight trilogy, and now you look back on Batman '89, you're like, wow, that's really campy and cheesy. So it's strange how that works out, but Batman Returns really is a much darker tale, I think. There's some real, you know, there's some heavy stuff in that, even the beginning with Penguin getting tossed out, and again, I could talk about these films forever, but it was great to see that one. Watching them back to back was a little bit of a tester on the old buttocks and back. Even though I've seen, like, you know, 3, 4, 5 films in the cinema in a day, I'm getting older. But also there was like a 10-minute break between the two films. So usually when I see like 3 films in a day at a cinema, I've got half an hour to an hour to walk around afterwards. But, you know, you're sitting there for pretty much 4 hours straight. It was a little bit of a, you know, a bit uncomfortable at times and stuff. But it was a blast to see that film on the big screen as well, because as a kid, it was my absolute favorite. You know, now I shift more to the '89 film, but I still really like Batman Returns. There's a lot of the sexually suggestive stuff that I had kind of forgotten about, but was always aware of. You know, I mean, of course, there's the classic "just the pussy I've been looking for" line, but even like, you know, she's here to fill a void, and then Penguin's like, "I'd like to fill her void. Show my French flipper trick," and it's just like, wow. And there is a line, and I said this on Twitter, where Penguin is running for mayor in the movie, and he's mainly interested in being mayor so he can kind of, like, you know, lech on women and kind of, you know, get them into bed and stuff, and he's like really horny and stuff, and he's pinning this badge on a woman's, like, you know, chest. He's like, let's get that in there, you know. And then afterwards he's like, this is great. He's like, you know, being a mayor isn't about politics, it's about connecting with the people, it's about touching and groping. And I just thought, ding, 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 who am I thinking of? I mean, you can put 2 and 2 together, and I just thought, wow, that's a really telling comment right there. You know, we were laughing a lot in the cinema, more out of just, like, disbelief at some of these lines. And one of my all-time favorite lines in movie history is when he says, I was their #1 son, but they treated me like #2. And there's lots of those great lines throughout both of the films. And one line, actually, I want to maybe end the video on this one, from Christopher Walken. You know, he's like having a conversation with Bruce Wayne towards the end of the film, and just to end the conversation and get out of it, he just goes, yawn, and then leaves, like, yawn, you know. And I'd never, like, it just never stuck in my head, and me and my friend were just like, I don't think I ever remembered that, and it's so funny, you know. And so I was online speaking to Daisuke, my good YouTube friend. I said, oh, we watched Batman and Batman Returns. He's like, oh, great. He's like, you know what my favorite line is? I'm like, what? And he's like, yawn. And I just couldn't believe the kind of, I don't know if it's coincidental, but like the one line I thought, huh, I never remembered that. And he's like, that's my favorite line. So Daisuke, that's your little shout out for this video. But I'd love to talk about these films in more depth, but I kind of already have many years ago, and videos that a lot of you people have probably never seen. But if you want to, go back and check out the RazorwireReviews Batathon. I'll leave a link to it maybe at the end of this video, so you can easily access it, and there's probably a playlist. But I do talk about these films, and there's lots of other personal stories and things. But suffice it to say very quickly, it was really great to see these films on the big screen again. One other thing I noticed in Batman was the scene when the guy comes with the knives in the alleyway and Batman's fighting him and blocking the knives. And you can see it's not Michael Keaton, even in a shot where he's not even doing anything. And it's like, so again, I feel like it must be the 4K remasters they used, because I could see so much detail and see, oh, that's not Penguin on the top of the building there, and so on. And yeah, so these films, I do feel they're of their time. I do feel if you've never seen these films and you watch them now, probably not going to hold up for you. I think you really need to grow up with them. They feel very much of their time for some reason. I think that the slightly campy nature of some of it is gonna rub people the wrong way if they go in blind without having seen them before. I don't know. That's just the feeling I get. For me, they hold up, but for a new audience and new eyes, I don't know if they would so much. I'd like to think they would, but I don't know. There was something about it that felt very, I don't say dated. I don't think they're dated. I just think they're of their time as far as the tone of it and everything. And a lot of people do reference the Prince music in Batman and say that it really horribly dates it. I don't really agree. I think it fits within the wacky world of Gotham that's been created already. I think it actually doesn't stand out too much, and kind of just goes along with the whole kind of weird tone of everything. But yeah, I feel like I could talk more and more and more and more and more about these films, but going to see them in the cinema was a phenomenal experience. You know, to be honest, I wouldn't put it in like my top 10 cinema experiences or anything like that, but just as a fan, it was just so cool to see him in the cinema. And it wasn't very packed out, maybe about, you know, 30 to 40 people there, but I just had a really good time seeing these films again on the big screen. And I did hear they were doing marathons elsewhere in the country of the Schumacher movies as well. No thank you. I like those films, but I think these two are kind of, you know, they're the ones for me. And where I put them in terms of Batman movies, I think they're my favorite. You know, I was thinking about it, and I don't know. That's a whole other topic, because I feel like the Dark Knight trilogy, the more I get removed from it, the less I love it. I think they're phenomenal films. I do love them, but you know, I feel like I was going along with the hype a little bit when the Dark Knight Rises came out, and I think that now that I'm removed from that, as much as I'm removed from these films when I watch the Dark Knight trilogy, I feel like they're more special to me. I don't think they're better. I think the Dark Knight trilogy are far better movies than these two, but the first '89 Batman, I think it's the best Batman film. I don't think it's the best film that has Batman in it, which will probably be the Dark Knight, but I think it's the best Batman film because it just feels like a comic book brought to life in a unique and dark and twisted and yet funny way. So I'll leave it with there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause